So we've got the Hakko FR-300 de-soldering gun back on the bench. In a previous video, we looked at the failure, but I'll recap it here. This is the heating element out of the unit and the cable that hooked onto the heating element. And I don't know if the camera will pick this up quick, but on the end of this wire, there's a little piece of copper or some kind of metal still attached to it, and the other three have completely just pulled out of the, however these were bonded. There's some kind of material these were attached via. They've just fallen loose, and this guy has this one's just literally peeled off. So whatever the material on the ceramic here is, it's just peeled off. So I was using the gun, I went to use it, it wouldn't desolder. Pretty quickly realized it was cooling off, took it apart, and this guy had come completely off. I mean, it came out of the gun just like this. So the question became, what actually failed? At first I thought the heating element had just opened, which would probably in my mind be the most common, but that doesn't seem to be true. What would cause all of these joints to fail? Well, overheat would. So the question in my mind then become, have the electronics failed in it, and it just constantly heated and the heat ramped up until it fell apart? Internally, is that failure vibration related? That could be. It could be vibration related. I just honestly don't know. Let's go ahead and get it open again here, just so we can take a look inside. So anyhow, I've ordered parts for it. Let's take a look at replacement parts. I got up on the Hakko USA website. They do have a local website. It looks like this was shipped out of Valencia, California. So it is a US supplier. And I basically just ordered one of every spare they still had available. I just didn't see a reason not to. The spares are, I think, starting to become a little bit difficult to get a hold of for the FR-300. It was replaced quite some time ago. But I went ahead and ordered a new heating element and a new printed circuit board. So the question becomes, why did that tip fail? If the board has failed and it's just constantly got the heater energized, it's going to overtemp pretty quick, and that would be one way of causing the tip to fail. Maybe vibration just broke that off and the PC board down here is safe, and fine. I don't know, is the point here. And so I really want to look at what it will take to swap this board out, and I can see already that there are soldered connections on it, which would need to be unsoldered, which is sad, but it looks like reality. So let's take a look at the spares here, and then we'll go from there. So do I have a pair of scissors someplace close here? There's only 3 pair here at the bench. You just never find them. Yeah, it saddens me looking at this that there are soldered connections to the PCB. Is what it is. It's in an anti-static bag, no less. Well, static dissipative bag. So really only the board goes in this direction. Looks like the power connections need to be soldered and the motor connections need to be soldered up. There's a MOSFET most likely here that may have failed on this board. If it's failed, that would cause the overtemp. So the question becomes, I guess, what really caused the overtemp? And let's release the board here. I may have to go look for the manual for this to put it back together, because I'm looking at the parts in the bucket here going, I don't remember the order, some of those stacked. Oh, the switch is even soldered on. Boy, this board is just straight a replacement board. So it's got the power switch on this side, it's got the trigger on this side, and they're just soldered directly on. Wow. It should just be this top nut. It Honestly, I'm feeling like if I'm going to go this far in a tear down, I might as well just replace the board. MOSFET doesn't look damaged. I'm not sure why I thought diode check was a good test here. We see 0.27 in one direction, and we see 0.27 in the other. So what am I looking through in the circuit? Oh, good Lord. Oh, this is a mess. Well, if we see a dead short here, we see an open. Oh no, we see 0.25 in both directions. Let me get it out of diode mode. Well, we've already know. Well, we get out of diode mode. Back to purely resistive. Okay, come on. Expect a very high resistance, 431 ohms. Okay, that's a lot less than I would have expected. But again, we're probably looking back through something else in the circuit. 403, we're not seeing a short is my point, so I'm going to make a judgment call here that the board is probably okay. And we can simply do our best to put this back together. Now, I didn't notice the orientation of this guy when it fell out. Is there a marking any place that indicates its polarity? Actually, one of these needs to go on first. Like I said, this is going to be just a laugh a minute to put back together. I'm looking at the spot where the adjuster is for can I turn this all the way to one of the extremes? I can. So that would be turned all the way to low. Low is down. This one has to be the one that was underneath. Can you see what a barrel of fun this is going to be? You lift it up out of the way. Were you all the way on the bottom? Yes, I believe so. I'm sure this has to do with getting ground out to the tip for ESD protection, so it is a couple of actually pretty important connections here. Earth ground. The tool itself has a plastic body. These little pliers are much better for that kind of work than a pair of needle nose. They don't slip off nearly as easily. You set on over the micro switch, and we're caught down in you're turned all the way to low. So I can get you back in. There we go. That's trapped in place. Low to max. So the replacement heating tip is here. Great. I forgot to get this cardboard spacer in, and one of the screws actually goes through it. So before I completely forget, let's pull that screw back out and see about working this guy back in. He was difficult enough to get out, so I would imagine getting him back in is going to be even more difficult. Okay. This element was not inexpensive by any sense of the word, so I can already see that the wire connections are really solid. It has not fallen apart like the other one did, which again takes me to, was this just vibration? Was this just huge amounts of use, which it has seen? It has to go through from the front. The cable must go through this way. It has to go that way. There's just no other way for it to go together and make any sense. There's a couple of brass inserts that connects into, which in my mind was this screw right here, which apparently is not magnetic. And of course the washer fell off. Of course it did. The washer falling off is of course the most inconvenient possible thing for it to do. Get this one started. There's one more just like it. This one the washer had already fallen off of when we took it apart. Hopefully I can get the washer out of there. Oh, come on. Really? It's a little tiny lock washer. That's no surprise. Sitting here trying to remember where this screw went, or this spring. There should be brass inserts in those for the 4 of these to hook up to. So let's go ahead and plug it in while we're here. We can set this assembly half in place. And those don't want to pick up with a little bit of magnetism. Why is that ground wire such a problem all of a sudden? airtight. Hopefully somewhat on camera. It all tucks away like so. Only goes together one way, and I believe it's like so, and it does mean those two screws have to come back out for this to sit down over the top. Hopefully their little lock washers will that's what I get for saying hopefully the little lock washer will stay on. Oh, of course it come off the end of the screw. That would be the most inconvenient thing it could do, so that's what it had to do. You sit down like so. It actually let us do it the first time because it knew I would have to take it back apart, and so it could be difficult the second time because, you know, that's how the universe works. I really do need you to just drop down in there. Allow the screwdriver to actually get a bite in the end of you and begin to turn down in. All the parts I ordered are actually here. Yes. There's another part that is that we're actually going to use. Just because the old one's gotten really grubby. Like I said, every spare they still listed I bought. I spent way more than I should have. This is the part that clips down into there with an actual tip. So let me shuffle stuff around up here. And let's find an actual tip we can put on there. Well, this one should go on actually. It does. And it should require the tool to lock it in place. And it does lock in place, so we must have that together correctly. So that is a good thing. We've made progress there. Actually, I left those a little loose for a reason. This nut wasn't part of this. It's just a random nut that showed up here. We know that this guy set over the standpipe there, but we won't put that back together till we're done. This is the return spring for this part of it, which goes in here. Had this big old spring set down in like so. Why does that seem? There was a spring on this latch, and what I'm missing is where it goes through this way, I believe. Yeah, I'm spending a whole lot of time here guessing. It went through like so. Let me get him caught back in there. And then I need it in the unloaded position. I need a flat to do this. A flat will work better. I have a small flat screwdriver laying around here. I need that spring to clear the little detent there and drop in like so. This little spring set on here. And so when you pull this back, it latches, which is what the yellow part is. And then when you push the latch back in, it releases it so that you can press the tube here through the middle. So that is where that spring came from, and that's back together. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 case screws. There are 4 self-tappers in here, all the same size, and there are the 2 that go in here. So we've accounted for all the parts. I know where that goes. I think we can actually set it back together now. I didn't order a replacement case, so that was the one thing I didn't order, and I can see it's starting to take some heat damage up here near the element. That's actually no surprise. There's a lot of heat that exists there. Okay, that is working much better. So let's put some screws in. These are self-tappers. Turn backwards till you hear the click, hopefully, and then forward. I heard the click, that way you catch into the original threads. That one popped nice and loud. Before I go any further, I want to make sure that these machine screws will engage in the little brass inserts that are molded in. One of them is right there. Obviously it did. And one of them is right here. I will come back around and tighten those after we get the rest of this put together. Okay, this wasn't as bad to put back together as I thought it was going to be. So it logically made sense, even if I didn't exactly remember the order I tore things down. So these don't need to be highly torqued, but tight enough to keep things together. Power switch works. We can crank the heat from low up to max. This little rubber piece here sits in this hose, which hooks up back here. Hopefully you can see that. Goes on the back of the collection mechanism. It might be easier to put the hose on first and then to work that into place. This is the little hose that the vacuum is drawn through, and this is to keep the hose from collapsing while it's drawing vacuum through it. This should cock back and release as it does. That's correct. This guy provides a vacuum seal up here. It could be cleaned a little better than that. And even though we've replaced this piece here once before, I bought another replacement, and I think I'm going to hold on to that replacement. I've got 2 fresh rubber seals. Let's go ahead and clean this out. This will work to collect the remnants in. I'm going to go ahead and replace the filter element as well. Let me find a Q-tip. And I'm just going to knock as much of the accumulated gunk out of the inside of the tube here as possible. The little air slots that, you know, the vacuum, well, the air gets drawn through to create the vacuum, accumulate stuff. Actually, I don't have a liner in the trash can yet. So, put this guy back together. Find a filter element. Set him into place. We should be back into an operational stance. Let's go ahead and mount up a tip with the nice shiny new. These tips are relatively new. I guess I can go ahead and put the back cover back on. It's actually pushing up against the hose. That's kind of interesting. I didn't realize it pushed on it. Huh. I don't recall that being... I can see it actually dragging the hose and crimping it off. That's surprising. I do not remember that ever being an issue before. There, it cleared and went on without a bunch of resistance. So, see, I'd never noticed that before. Will you actually grab? Oh, whatever that turned into no longer exists. Wonderful. I've lost a piece someplace. There's nothing rattling inside. Huh. There was some kind of threaded item there this turned into that I have completely misplaced. I would say I've probably lost it. So, there's the first lesson to be learned. If you tear yours down, there's something that's set in there that this screwed into that I no longer have. And I'm looking around the bench here. And the problem is I've wiped the bench down and thrown away the stuff I found on it several times since I took this apart. And that trash has been taken out. There's not even a way to go dig to see if I can find whatever it was. Oh, that little nut that I didn't know where it came from. I'll bet it's this little nut right here. That sure feels like it. Yep. So let's go ahead and release the tension. We're going to tear it back down, assuming I haven't lost the little nut already. I bet that little nut had a spot it set inside there. Let's go ahead and pull these guys back out. We hadn't actually got around to tightening them yet. Don't want to lose them. Back these back out. That one was over tightened. That's on me. I don't remember driving those in that firmly. Hopefully this half of the cover will just lift off. And yep, right here is a little captive spot for this little nut to sit inside of. Like so. That's where that little nut came from. So that's why it randomly just appeared on the bench, as it had fallen out of there at some point. Let's actually dump these screws out. I heard that one hit the bench. It didn't make it into the container. We'll see about getting things lined up again. Oh, rats. That's what I get for leaving the hose on there. You go in there so you don't get lost. You need to get the little spring caught inside of you, like so. This little spring goes back on there. Yeah, I should have taken that hose off. It created tension where we didn't need tension. Okay, everything's clamped back together and I can see the nuts in place. Back here. This isn't the best screwdriver for these, but it's the one I have at hand. Set you back up. Really? Okay, that was very useful for you to jump back up out of there like that. I really appreciate it. And now I refuse to go down in. Where's the other one? So bloody difficult to deal with after trimming my fingernails. I was sitting here trying to spin it backwards to get it to drop into the threads. Well, it's a machined bolt into a brass insert, so I don't actually necessarily need to do that. Okay. Little vacuum hose goes back on. The little stopper assembly to keep it from collapsing goes back on. It's forward in that position. Perfect. Much happier with that. Pull it open. We're under spring tension, but not as much as I'd like. That doesn't seem to be grabbing near as firmly as it used to. Huh. Okay, that's just odd that that's just kind of floating there. Is this not moving as far forward as it should? It's not. There's something not aligned right, or that used to grab that very firmly. Well, we're going to tear it down one more time. Oh, it doesn't fail. Is this a better screwdriver for these? Yes, it is. Let's actually use a screwdriver with a proper tip. We learned our lesson before. We're going to release the little hose to remove the tension off of there. Oh, I see what's happened. The spring is positioned incorrectly. I'm not sure how that happened, but the spring is definitely positioned incorrectly. It needs to go like so, and now it can move all the way forward. I suspect that'll make all the difference right there. So there's a little plastic piece that sticks out here on the blue that the spring needs to be to this side of, and the plastic blue would ended up in one of the windings of the spring, so the assembly couldn't close all the way forward correctly. So I know that I got that correct the first couple times I put it together, because I looked this last time it somehow ended up out of position. Oh, Lordy. This spring would have gotten forgotten. I swear to you that COVID brain is real. Because I am certainly not as bright as I used to feel. I struggle a little bit more with long-term memory than I used to. I've gotten better here recently, but I had COVID in December last year. It took a lot of months to get to the point where I could even think well enough to attempt this kind of work. So at the moment, I'm just going to get things back together enough to verify things feel correct. You're triggered. You should grab that very solidly like that. Yes, that's got good tension. That feels really good. So that's what I expected before and didn't get. All of these surfaces need to be cleaned to get the best vacuum it can. So maybe this time. Is this the third time? If it is the third time, then it was the charm. So, of course, that assumes I can get that screw to go in, not lose it. Everybody feels tight. Trigger feels good. cover back in place. Good, it just dropped directly on. It didn't catch on anything, just as it should have. And power is off. Yeah, you can see the difference in the tubes here. This is the original one. I probably had this tool for a decade. This is the original one, and it's just over time gotten grubbier and grubbier. So the nice clean starting out this time is nice. Let me go ahead and plug it in. I don't have a soldering tip heat detector. Well, we have power. We are down at low temp. So we'll see how warm this tip gets. It's already starting to heat a bit. If it gets hot enough to melt solder quickly, we know that it's just constantly being driven. That seems wrong. That is all the way down at low. Shoot. I'm gonna have to go find my good thermometer. I've got one that'll measure the tip temperature. Hopefully it's shiny. It may not. Because I would have expected at low that not to heat up solder. One is 350. Oh well. So low is below 1. Oh, I'm calling that low. That's actually 1. So 1 they call 350, 400, 450, 500. So even at the low setting, it should be melting solder. So, that sounds perfectly normal. Tip is cleaned up well. Using my nose to kind of feel for temperature. It doesn't seem excessively hot. Let's drive the temperature up. Oh yeah, that's getting hotter. Oh yeah, it's definitely heating beyond where it was. Uncomfortably warm against my nose. And that's coming back down. So okay, I think we're probably good. I think the controller board's probably fine. We have a nice shiny new tip. We only had to take it apart 3 times, 4 times to get it back together correctly. Isn't that always the way? I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to set it over here in its little stand to cool off. I do have a little stand that I use for it. We'll kind of recap here. We know that this element failed for whatever reason. That lead peeled off of there somehow and took the little weld or whatever that was, brazing, whatever it was with it. So definitely failed. We have some empty bags here and some empty bags over here. We're going to want to hold on to the circuit board replacement. I don't have enough markings on these bags to know what bag was what. It doesn't really matter. We open this up, we can just dump these pieces out. I went ahead and bought a new handle. It was not that expensive in case I ever lose this one. It's a critical part. if I ever break this part of the trigger. I have that. I bought another set of rubbers for the two ends of the tube. I've got a bunch of these now. I didn't realize it came 5 in a bag, and I almost think last time I bought some of those, I made the same comment when we looked at them about I didn't realize it was 5 of those I was purchasing and not just one. I suspect there's 4 new ones floating around in here, and there are, plus an original one. Yeah. So I have plenty of those guys. And we'll call this hopefully a successful repair. I'll know next time I go to use the gun. So anyhow, if you got all the way to the end of the video, I appreciate your watching. I hope to see you in the next one. We'll talk soon.